Mic, please. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today for today's safety and security briefing. I'd like to introduce to you the President and CEO of Breeders' Cup Limited, Mr. Craig Fravel.
Thank you, Jimmy. This is a real privilege for us to welcome all of you to the Breeders' Cup 2019 here at Santa Anita Park. But the real pleasure in this is so that you can put a face to all the hard work that's being done here at the racetrack, not just today and tomorrow and Saturday and Friday, but all week long in the months leading up to the Breeders' Cup. This is an ongoing process, a major commitment of human and economic resources directed at the safety of the horses and riders here at the Breeders' Cup. And I want to thank what we have over here, and Dora's going to introduce them all later, is our veterinary team. We have veterinarians who have volunteered their time to come to the Breeders' Cup from all over the world, not just the United States, but venues like Britain and France and Ireland, who are familiar with many of these horses. They've had the opportunity as regulatory veterinarians to examine them in their home countries, and this is a real opportunity to hear from the experts on track surface, on veterinary inspections, you name it, we have the experts in our out-of-competition testing program. All of this organized by Dora Delgado, who heads up the Breeders' Cup racing operations. So I'm going to leave this to Dora to make further introductions, but thank you all again for coming.
Great, thank you, Craig. I really wanted to get all of our team members here just so that the members of the media and the public can understand what a multifaceted approach this is for safety and security. I'm going to release these guys because they have some very important work still to be done in the barn area, but these are the combined members of the Breeders' Cup vet team, and they've been out there hard at work making sure all our runners are going to be in the best health when they set foot on tracks on Friday and Saturday. So I just wanted to for you all to put some faces to our team members. Thank you all so much for coming. Dr. Benson is going to kick off this discussion today talking about the reforms that the Stronach Group in Santa Anita put in place and how we've meshed those with our group.
So, welcome everyone to Santa Anita Park. This process for us really started in March when we reopened the racetrack. Upon reopening the racetrack, we revised the regulations, and particularly one of the areas we focused on was training. For those of you who don't know, before these events, most in the world still, there is no restrictions or regulations around training in the morning. We all require every horse that is going to train or do a timed workout on our track must have private veterinary sign-off. They must actually sign up for training. We check horses prior to training if we have any concerns about their health or welfare. Just to give you an idea of how many horses we have checked, there are approximately 18 horses on the grounds, and not including Breeders' Cup checks, we have checked 900 of those horses since the reopening of our track. Those 900 horses are responsible for over 1,500 examinations, individual examinations on those horses. And we also restrict medications in training, and in conjunction with the CHRB, testing is performed on those horses in training. Switching to racing, we have significantly restricted medications in racing, consistent with the exception of Lasix with IFHA standards. We have private vet sign-off before a horse is allowed to enter, and we have additional vet coverage at Santa Anita Park by Santa Anita Park vets every day during racing. Toward that end, we have hired, in addition to myself, 4 veterinarians to observe training and racing every day at Santa Anita Park, in addition to those that were already in existence and working for us.
Dr. Arthur?
Yes, I'm Dr. Rick Arthur, Equine Medical Director. I'll briefly discuss drug testing, injury management, and make some comments on upcoming weather conditions. The CHRB's drug testing laboratory is a Maddie laboratory at UC Davis. The Maddie laboratory is RMTC accredited and it's the only IFHA certified laboratory in the U.S. actually the only IFHA certified laboratory in the Western Hemisphere. All horses in the Breeders' Cup races will be sampled for TCO2 testing. That's our standard operating procedure on the Southern California Thoroughbred Circuit. The first 4 finishers in every Breeders' Cup race will be tested, and additional horses may be chosen by the Board of Stewards at their discretion, such as a poor performance by a favorite or any other issue that comes to the steward's attention. Blood and urine samples will be collected from each horse. The samples will be couriered up to UC Davis by a CHRB investigator early Sunday morning, and testing will begin Sunday afternoon, and we expect the results by late Tuesday. This is my 8th Breeders' Cup as Equine Medical Director and my 7th here at Santa Anita. While our focus is on injury prevention, we are well prepared to handle on-track emergencies. The Santa Anita track veterinarian, Dr. Dana Stead, is in charge of on-track emergency management. He has multiple veterinary teams positioned to assist him, including Santa Anita, Breeders' Cup, CHRB, and UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine faculty veterinarians. Injured horses will be transported to their home barns or the equine hospital as necessary. Be aware that our equine ambulances are used very liberally here at Santa Anita and on the Southern California Circuit. We don't hesitate to provide a precautionary courtesy ride home for any horse we have any concern about. The weather will be slightly warm for Breeders' Cup and projected to be in the mid-80s with very low humidity. That means the heat index will be very moderate at most. Regardless, we are aware that this beautiful California fall weather is a big change for European horses, so we are prepared for any heat stress conditions that may arise. I've also had some questions about air quality with the wildfires. Heretofore, all the fires are downwind from us. But the LA Basin has very good air quality monitoring information, and if conditions change, we're well positioned to monitor air quality. That's all I have to say.
Great, thank you, Rick. Dr. Grande, if you would speak a few minutes about the role of the official veterinarian and the 14-day medical records that are required for all Breeders' Cup runners that shipped into California.
Okay. My name's Tim Grande. I've been with the CHRB since 2010, official vet since 2011. Essentially work on the day-to-day operations, supervise the testing in the test barn and the holding barn or detention barn ahead of going to the paddock. As far as the 14-day records is a new policy. Normal regulation in California is for daily treatment reports from the CHRB licensed veterinarians that is evaluated by my office to enforce and make sure that rules and medication policies are followed to the letter. This Breeders' Cup policy with the 14 days in an effort to capture some of the information on the ship-in horses, whether they come from another state or another country. Purpose of that being to monitor the new medication policies from the Stronach group regarding intra-articular therapy and non-steroidal therapy.
Great, thank you, Dr. Grande. Before these horses actually started making plans to come to Breeders' Cup, we started our security and testing program. Dr. William Farmer is our out-of-competition testing program administrator and our veterinary advisor. Dr. Farmer will tell you about when we started testing horses, the horses we targeted for testing, and what those results have been.
So we started this year with testing once we start our Win and You're In challenge races, which is in June. We started testing horses primarily at that point based in the United States because that's where those races were happening here. I can tell you that to date we have tested horses in 7 different racing jurisdictions across the United States, as well as Canada, France, Ireland, and England. This is all through great cooperation with the racing jurisdictions. The integrity that we put forth in trying to sample these horses for out-of-competition testing requires a lot of work, a lot of time that has been volunteered by the other racing jurisdictions to help us collect those samples. It's very much appreciated, and we're very thankful for all the help that we get from those jurisdictions so that we can maintain chain of custody. All of our samples are submitted to the MADI lab, which is also the official testing lab for the California Horse Racing Board. The scope of our out-of-competition testing program is aimed at the non-therapeutics. Those are the medications that do not belong in a horse, that are known for affecting a horse's performance. We have traditionally done our out-of-competition testing on blood. This year we did add another matrix of hair. Approximately 10% of the starters were subjected to a paired sample of both blood and hair. We also included this year bisphosphonate testing in a select group of 2-year-olds. We did approximately 10% of the 2-year-olds as well. Were tested along with the out-of-competition panel, were subjected to a bisphosphonate testing. Overall, through the whole program, we have tested over 252 horses. Now, all of those horses now aren't obviously necessarily running, but with the scope, we throw a very wide net at the very beginning because we have horses that that appear or we hope are going to be participating that for some reason do not end up participating. Nonetheless, they are still subject to testing. This year, we have tested, off of the entries, we have tested 155 out of the 168 runners, which is 92% of the horses will have been tested. And we will have 100% of all U.S.-based horses are tested, North American horses, because we did get the Canada as well. Doing testing in other countries is very challenging, and other countries, they're not stable like we are here in the United States with horses at racetracks. So there's some very serious logistical issues, and that's why we were very grateful to the help from the other countries in helping us try to sample as many of those as possible. And I can also report that as of today, testing is still ongoing. We will continue up till race day. But so far, all of our results that we have gotten back, we've had no positives, no suspicious samples at this point. Everything has come back clean on all of the tests.
Great. Thanks, Will. The Breeders' Cup Veterinary team was created out of an abundance of caution. We wanted to make sure that all runners that are going to run in championship events had multiple sets of eyes on them for multiple days. Dr. Deborah Lampeter heads up our Breeders' Cup Veterinary panel, and she's going to tell you a little bit about their work.
Yes, good morning. The panel's been in existence since 1993. I think you saw this morning a large group of the veterinarians that are part of that panel. This year we have assembled the largest group that we have ever had from regulatory tracks across the United States and partial experienced veterinarians. We've been looking already at the horses in conjunction with veterinarians from the California Horse Racing Board and the Stronach Group. We've been conducting physical inspections at the barns. There are 20 veterinarians doing these jobs. At the barn, we're looking at the horses at rest and in motion. We also have teams of veterinarians out on the racetrack observing the horses during morning training. Anything that's observed on the racetrack is relayed to veterinarians in the barn area, and those horses will be rechecked at that point. We have also had every entrant at this point that's on the grounds has received exams, and every horse will have at least 3 barn exams prior to race day, and all horses that are here have been seen on the racetrack as soon as the quarantine horses naturally were late and coming out of quarantine, so they were the last ones that we've been able to see out there. There have been more than 170 horses inspected in the barns, and we probably have more than 500 barn exams. At this point, we are very happy with the progress and expect to have completed everyone by tomorrow with no trouble. Every Breeders' Cup entrant has also had referral if there is any concern during these exams. Diagnostics are requested. After review, if the horse is deemed unfit to start, then the official California racing veterinarian will recommend that the horse is removed from the race. Every During race days as well, we will have the horses inspected in the barn and then watched by more than 30 veterinarians on the racetrack and positioned around. So there should be no incidents of any place that a veterinarian would not be able to see. No horses racing anywhere have been more examined or more observed than these horses. It's definite that we feel that we're going to also watch them totally from the receiving barn to the paddock, to the post, to the gate, to the wire, and of course after the race on their way home. So all of this is being done to ensure the best for the horse and to make sure that we have done our utmost for the safety of these racehorses.
Terrific. Thanks, Debbie. Equine security is also a major component of the Breeders' Cup plan. It remains a top priority to make sure that we get these horses on the grounds, not only for the veterinarians to start observing them and examining them, but also that our security teams can start logging those individuals that go into the horse's stall, what medications are administered, and to make sure that we give our public and our wagering fans a product that they feel can wager with confidence, and that it has been seen to that every animal has eyes on it. Part of this approach is a 3-tiered approach. We have a 72-hour mandatory check-in where they have to be in their stalls. At that point in time, an equine security officer is assigned to that horse. We have a 3-tier approach. There are 15 Breeders' Cup equine investigators that are law enforcement professionals from around the U.S. and Canada. We have 12 CHRB investigators that are paired up with our team, and we have over 140 individual equine security officers that take their place in those barns and shed rows and log visitors in and out. They also control the access to those shed rows. In addition to that, Santa Anita has an amazing surveillance system that has over 1,100 cameras in all shed rows. We are in approximately 32 barns. They obviously have their cameras in every barn, as well as high traffic areas, gates, gaps, tunnels, everywhere where a horse might possibly step, they've got eyes on it. So it's an incredible plan. We're glad to partner with Santa Anita. All these horses will have eyes on them until they finally return to their barn after racing. The next component to our safety and security plan is obviously the track surfaces. Dr. Mick Peterson is here to explain what he's been doing on testing the surface to make sure it's a safe and consistent one.
It's a pleasure to work with Santa Anita. I'm a faculty member at University of Kentucky in the agricultural engineering, and I'm also executive director of the nonprofit Racing Surfaces Testing Laboratory. A lot of the research that's been going on for the last decade has been led by the Southern California tracks, Del Mar, Santa Anita, and in the past, Hollywood Park, where we developed what we now refer to as the maintenance quality system. This is now used at most of the Tier 1 racetracks across the country, and it's a 3-stage process. It starts with a design review of the racetrack, the surface, checking of grades, and review of equipment for each race meet. Then prior to having horses on the track, as you go into a race meet, testing is done. Ground penetrating radar is used to inspect the base. Biomechanical surface tester is used to pull together all of the other measurements because it's a machine that replicates the forelimb of a thoroughbred at a gallop. And then there's a review of equipment and inspection of all the equipment. The third stage of the maintenance quality system is the daily monitoring that's done by track personnel on a daily basis. That includes a weather station that automatically logs the conditions for each race, moisture measurements that are done on the track, cushion depth measurements, and documentation of each piece of equipment that goes out on the track, the amount of water applied, and a full tracking of the maintenance process. In addition, for Breeders' Cup, we've had one of the engineers from Racing Surfaces Testing Laboratory has been on site for the entire last month to help support the superintendent and his team. We've got a very experienced superintendent here, Dennis Moore, and he's got good assistance from Jesse and Andy for both the turf and the dirt. What the engineer on site has been doing is providing additional support for Dennis to make his decisions as he goes into the Breeders' Cup races. This is a very extensive process, and given the fact that it's been ongoing at Santa Anita for the last 10 years, we have a large amount of baseline data to compare composition and all those other measurements that we're making on the track.
Thanks, Mick. We also have brought in renowned turf expert Michael Prosser from the Jockey Club in the UK. We brought Michael in to take a look at the turf course, map it for consistency, and Mike, you want to talk a little bit about your process?
Thanks very much indeed. Likewise, it's a pleasure to be here. So my role at Newmarket is head of racing, and one of my areas of responsibility is the delivery of the racing surface for all 39 of our race days at both the July course and Rowley Mile. So what we're doing is we're utilising the turf track's going stick, and that is mandatory in the UK. So every racecourse has to use the going stick in conjunction with a going description. So we've been walking the course, we've mapped it out, we've zoned it, and within each of those zones we take a reading and then we map it afterwards. And all of that information is being distributed to the trainers, the horsemen, and the media. Other key pieces of information are obviously what watering, irrigation is being undertaken, what aeration is being undertaken, and obviously rail movements included. And this is exactly what we're doing in the UK. It's been well received. It's thorough. I've been really impressed with the maintenance regime and the staff that I've been dealing with. Currently, the going description is firm. Obviously, the weather is set fair, so